I think you'll probably see the best race that we've ever seen in off-road racing.
Fast, aggressive, and very violent.
I'm driving number 20 to the finish line as quick as I can get it there.
The Nature's Recipe Score Parker 400. Welcome to off-road racing. Today featuring the Score International, Ducati Trophy Truck Series, and Pro Series races. Brought to you by the new Dodge, a division of the Chrysler Corporation. Toyota Motorsports, technology on a fast track. And Nature's Recipe, innovative pet foods, the natural for today's pet.
Hello everyone, I'm Steve Weiss and welcome to the Nature's Recipe Parker 400. I'm here with five-time Baja 1000 champion Dave Ashley. Dave, this is the biggest trophy truck field we've seen yet.
Steve, it really is. You know, this is the second year of the series. Everybody's going to be vying for that championship this year. Rob McCachran, he came in and won it last year, and they're going to be looking for him. He's my teammate with the Ford Rough Riders. Ford's here, Dodge is here, Chevrolet's here, Toyota's here, and they all want to win this championship.
In addition to the trophy trucks, there are another 180 buggies and trucks here, including Dave Ashley's, for the Pro Series race. We'll have a short report on the highlights of that event following our trophy truck coverage, which begins at the crack of dawn. Minutes prior to the start of the race, and Dave, as most of the drivers are now lining up in position, the three Baldwin Racing entries are just now getting here and going through a last-minute technical inspection.
This is the first race of the year, and there's always some people that have just barely made it here with brand new equipment, and this is the case with these guys. They really worked their tail off to get here.
From the Baldwins to Robbie Gordon, everyone here has high expectations.
I get to run 5 and possibly 6 races. It depends on what they do with the Laughlin race or the Gold Coast race. And as soon as they decide what they do with that race, then we'll be able to see if we'll be able to win a championship. But the main focus this year is the Indy car, and when I have a couple of weekends off, we'll come out and race the off-road car.
Well, we'll see how Robbie fares dividing his attention. Meanwhile, Danny Lettner is ready to lead the field. He'll be the first trophy truck off the line. If you're new to off-road, here comes the tough part. You need to be a bit of a math whiz. The vehicles start 1 minute apart, so they race against the clock. Here's a look at our first two trucks. Danny Lettner, 66 years old, from Orange, California.
Yes, and next is my Rough Rider teammate, 34-year-old Paul Simon, Fallbrook, California.
Paul shares the driving duties with his 37-year-old brother Dave, who will start the race today. They are the defending Parker 400 Trophy Truck champions. Remember now, Lettner is already a minute into the race. He's made his way to the end of the pavement and past a large mud puddle that until just this morning covered the width of the road. He safely passed and out onto the course. Now let's go back to the start line where Walker Evans is eagerly awaiting his turn, one of 3 Walker Evans race trucks we'll see today. The 55-year-old veteran is from Riverside, California.
Behind Walker is 47-year-old Roger Mears from Bakersfield, California. Roger didn't get to run this race last year in his trophy truck. He wasn't ready with it yet, but he's been out and running since, and it's been running strong, just waiting for his first win.
His best finish last season was a 3rd place at the Baja 500. Next up is Steve Kelly, and this is his first race for the Walker Evans race team.
Oh, this is exciting running for Walker Evans and Dodge this year. I tell you, it's a completely new situation for me, obviously. Been driving 4-wheel drive the last 2 years, and it was a 2-wheel drive truck, which I ran for 10 years. So handles great, it's fast, it's got the V10 in it. I can't tell you how excited I am running for Walker and Dodge.
Steve Kelly has been around a long time. He's raced against many members of this field before. He should do real well on this new team. Steve is 46 years old and lives in Irvine, California.
Starting behind Steve will be 25-year-old Robbie Gordon from Orange, California. I'm talking with Robbie. He tells me that he loves off-road racing. It's a lot of fun for him, and he really wants to come to as many of these races as he can, but he will be racing Indy cars this year.
That is his first commitment. We're glad to have him here in the desert as well. Robbie will be followed off the line by one of his sponsors, the Ultra Wheels Ford of Jim Smith, who also happens to be the winner of the last trophy truck race held, the 1994 Baja 1000. That win allowed him to finish 2nd in the points race last year. As Jimmy starts, Robbie takes the corner down at that mud puddle, Dave.
Well, you can tell Robbie's on the gas, and that's normal for Robbie. He wants to be out in front, and he likes to put on a good show for the crowd.
There is a big crowd on hand for this race, and here comes Jim Smith at the same corner.
Yeah, this ultra-wheel Ford, Jimmy, has really practiced a lot for this course, and I think he'll run up in front later.
Here's a look at Jim Smith, 47 years old, comes to us from Buena Park, California. Following Smith will be 55-year-old Jim Baldwin from Newport Beach. Dave, these Baldwin trucks don't have any testing time on them. How well can they compete?
Well, they're just looking to get out here and get their feet wet in this. They've been racing buggies with Porsche-powered engines. Now they're in V8s, and I'm sure they want to learn as much as they can at this race.
Next on our lineup is truck number 1, the defending trophy truck champion, Rob McCachran, who has to be considered one of the favorites for this race. Rob is 29 years old and part of the long off-road racing tradition from Las Vegas, Nevada. He'll be followed by 37-year-old Marty Coyne from Lemon Grove.
Marty's got a lot of off-road experience. I used to race against him last year in Class 8. I'm sure he'll do very well in this new class. It's something that's going to be awfully new to him for a while, but I'll tell you what, he can get it done.
Here's another newcomer to the Trophy Trucks division, Ron Stobaugh. He's had great success in other desert races. This is his first try at a SCORE International race. Ron is 31 years old and lives in Laguna Niguel, California. He'll be followed by 51-year-old Larry Ragland from Phoenix, Arizona.
Larry's been at this a long time, and I tell you, he's one of the other guys that I would say would be a favorite at this race. He pre-runs a lot. He does his homework out there on the race course, and I'd like to see him do well.
Next up will be another one of our race favorites, 49-year-old Ivan Stewart from Alpine, California. Behind Ivan will be 42-year-old Bob Ritchie from Riverside, California.
This is a good look at Ivan Stewart's truck. This is a V6 powered Toyota that has a fully independent rear suspension, unlike the straight axles of the other trucks.
This is Bob Ritchie. He's been coming to Parker for just about as long as the race has been held, and we're talking more than 20 years, folks. Bob shares driving duties with Tom Baker. Their best finish last year was 6th place. Now back at the start line where Jason Baldwin is getting ready to roll. This is another one of the big new Baldwin Ford F-150s that are mighty good looking, but as Dave said earlier, they'll be tested here today. Jason is the son of Jim Baldwin. He's 23 years old and is from Newport Beach. Next will be 39-year-old Kurt LeDuc from Cherry Valley, California. Dave, it looks like Kurt is, I guess, stretching out here or something.
Well, I think he's got this routine down pat. He's been coming out here and doing these races for quite a while. And, you know, and every driver's got their own way of getting into concentration mode for a start of a race, and this is Kurt's.
Next off the line will be 35-year-old Javier Espinoza from Ensenada, Mexico. He'll be followed by another member of the Rough Rider team, 33-year-old John Swift from Oxnard.
Here's Javier. He's come up from Mexico to run this race. This shows you that this is a truly international race.
John Swift led the trophy truck standings for a good part of '94. Then he flipped this new truck at Barstow. He's still looking for a strong finish with it. Back at the start line, the third member of the Walker Evans team, another proven veteran of bikes, buggies, and trucks, Jack Johnson. Jack is 42 years old. He's from Las Vegas, Nevada. He'll be followed by 29-year-old Carl Rosenator from Laguna Beach, California. We've been watching the action at this big puddle all morning. Well, just to show you how deep it is, they're evidently looking for fish in here. All 20 trophy trucks are now out on the course. Stay with us. We'll check on their progress when we return with more off-road racing here on Prime. Welcome back to Off-Road Racing on Prime. Steve Weiss and Dave Ashley. We're watching the trophy truck of Danny Lettner, who was the first truck off the line. Although remember, because of the staggered start, everyone is running against the clock. Let's take a look at the map, Dave, and take us through this course.
They're going to run 3 shorter loops around a spectator area. One part of it is very rough and one part of it's very fast. Then they're going to run up and run through what we call Swansea Ghost Town, back around through Midway. Then they're going to go up and hit some fast pole line roads which come back around and eventually get back into a rough area before Midway. Then right back into that fast section to the finish line.
Well, we've got trouble right off the bat. This is Dave Simon. He has a drive shaft problem just 8 miles into the race. That's a big problem for a race this short. That allows Walker Evans, who started 1 position behind the Simons, to take off. And Dave, this is certainly one of off-road's state-of-the-art trucks.
It certainly is. This is one of those fuel-injected V10 Dodges, and this is from the in-car camera, and you can see how smooth it is in one of the roughest sections of the course. It's really hard for the average person to take a look and see how fast these trucks are really going.
From Walker's in-car, we jump back outside in time to see the big Chevy of Roger Mears go rolling by. The fans won't be disappointed out here today because here we go. Steve Kelly, although he started a minute ahead, is already trying to hold off a hard-charging Robbie Gordon. Right behind Gordon is Jim Smith, who won the Parker 400 in a Class 1 buggy a few years back. Jim Baldwin started right behind Smith. The 1994's Class 1 points champion is hanging right in there here in the early going. Rob McCachran is proudly displaying that #1 plate he earned last year, using a strategy of finish, don't break. He knows everyone will be chasing him this season.
It means I'm the one to gun for. You know, we've been working real hard at Venable Racing and Ford to try to make that #1 plate stick on that truck for the whole 95 season and then put it on again in 96.
Rob's been at this a long time. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows this truck very well. He knows how hard he can push it and what he has to save for the end of the race. And I'm sure he'll be doing everything he can to win this championship again. Points mean everything. Here's Marty Coyne, and watch this right front wheel. He could be developing a problem here. What we're seeing here is bump steer, but it's not caused by a mechanical problem. It's caused by the road. The road is actually flexing that tie rod and throwing that tire out of whack.
We're now looking at the Toyota of Ivan Stewart. The Ironman managed to win 3 of the Ducati Trophy Truck races last season, more than anyone else on the circuit. It's more than just winning, though, that attract these major truck manufacturers to desert racing. It's the technology they can test in the deserts of California, Nevada, Arizona, and the one and only Baja, Mexico.
Baja is brutal, tough, dusty.
Baja is challenging. It's a test. It's the last frontier.
Baja is one of those desert frontiers yet to be tamed. No matter how impossible that task seems to be, these men and their sophisticated racing machines just keep coming back.
Probably the most overused description of Baja is that it's the ultimate test of man and machine. But honestly, it's not that much of an exaggeration. You want brutal? This is brutal. You want tough desert? This is tough desert. And if you're looking for the ultimate challenge, well, this is it.
Our co-host, Dave Ashley, and fellow Rough Rider Steve Olagus spend weeks preparing for each desert race, whether it's Baja or the Parker 400. This desert test track proves to be very beneficial for Ford engineers who estimate that 300 miles of desert driving can represent as much as 200,000 miles of street vehicle testing. It's the driver's job to push it to the limit. Those limits are now being stretched.
We'll be driving down a road and we'll hit something so hard that you're just looking straight up at the sky. And this thing will come on down and it just lands on its wheels and keeps on going.
They're flying ditches that are 4 or 5 feet deep, and they're crashing across to the other side at 100, 120 miles an hour. And they're taking this kind of beating for 15, 16, 17 hours right in a row.
It was desert racing and testing that allowed Ford engineers to push the development of an electronic computer transmission system, kind of a stick shift without a clutch. That technology quickly makes its way into stock vehicles.
And this is technology that's on the showroom right now. This isn't stuff you're waiting for. This is here today. This E4OD transmission is out here right now in all your trucks.
A lot of the parts on the Lightning truck driven by Olagus are truly stock parts. That means the manufacturers are testing more than just race parts. They also can test the performance of consumer equipment already in use. Whether it's new technology or a test of durability, the desert has proven to be a terrific testing ground. The information engineers can pick up here will keep them busy in Detroit for many months to come. Dave, thanks for taking us along on that ride. We're on another ride, this time inside the Toyota of Ivan Stewart.
This is a great in-car camera view from the back where you can see Ivan's head moving around. Off-road racers have incredibly strong necks from taking this kind of abuse all day long. Ivan's been at this a long time, and I'm sure he's quite used to it, but you take a rookie out for a ride like this, and their head's going to be sore.
Kurt LeDuc's not sore. He was warming up before the race we saw him. He's got that big new V8 to power him along this season. He proved last year, midway through the season, that he would be a contender in each and every race. Jason Baldwin a year ago was negotiating this Parker 400 course in a Class 1 buggy. He had a solid 6th place finish in that race, and he'll look to get some time on those wheels today. John Swift wants more than just time on the wheels. He debuted this Ford Ranger last year. His best finish overall for the season was 2nd. That's Jack Johnson in what was a Class 8 Dodge truck. It's not up to full trophy truck specs yet, but he's pushing it along very well so far.
Here's Dave Simon coming back out on the course after losing about 20 minutes, but you can bet he'll be on the gas. He's going to try to make up all of it.
Simon does manage to get out ahead of the last starter, Carl Renezetter, but the defending Parker 400 champs, the Simons, have a tough road ahead of them. Stay with us for more off-road racing here on Prime. Welcome back to Off-Road Racing on Prime. Steve Weiss with Dave Ashley, and through lap 1 now, and look at the time Robbie Gordon has put on the rest of the field. More than 2.5 minutes in just 31 miles. That's amazing. Here's the downside, though. Robbie is pulling into his pits with a problem. Don't adjust your sets. Robbie has an oil problem, and it has nearly shut down our in-car camera. But if you look closely, you can see through some of that oil. Yeah, Robbie telling his crew to check the filters, the air cleaners, anything that might be affected by all of this flying oil. This is a major problem for Robbie Gordon. Meanwhile, further up the course, this is Jason Baldwin. They're now working on the back of his truck as the first truck on the road, Walker Evans, goes flying by. Walker's best finish last year was a 4th. He has plans of improving on that record in '95.
Certainly, I want to beat my own drivers. I want to beat all 18 or 20 or whatever's in the field, all of them. But I want to win a manufacturer's championship for Dodge. We want to win as many races as we can in the Score Series.
Take a look at this. Walker Evans splashing water in the desert. All racers love this, no dust. And we can all see him. Walker's eating it up.
Dave, where'd they get this radar gun? At the flea market? I don't know if I've ever seen Robbie Gordon go as slow as 47 miles per hour. He's now back running under a full head of steam. How long can he do that, losing oil like he is?
Well, he could probably go a long ways if his co-driver can keep up with pouring it in. And I'm sure right now he's sitting right there and he's putting oil in that dry sump tank, and he's probably worried about it, but they'll keep going.
We mentioned earlier that Robbie's also one of the hottest drivers on the Indy circuit, which has made him a very popular racing figure.
This is the car, the Indy car for '95. Painted just like the off-road truck, and then this one and Indy helmet.
Robbie Gordon is very marketable. Just ask his mom, Marlene, who has followed him to Indy, NASCAR, and off-road events for several years, providing the supply end of things for the demand of Robbie Gordon paraphernalia.
We go to every race from Vancouver to Australia. This year we'll be doing some promotional items or shows in between.
The side benefit is that this job keeps Marlene very busy during those anxious race moments.
I love it. It gives me an opportunity to go to all the races, and it makes me so I'm not so nervous. I'm so busy usually before a race and right after, and sometimes during the race I have to come down. We have radios and come down and help out. That takes the fear out of what I'm watching him do. But, you know, he loves it, and I love him doing it, and I love watching. I love racing.
Back to race action now. This is Jim Smith rolling by the speed gun. He clocks a 45. I guess the truth of the matter is, in a street vehicle, you'd be lucky to go 4 miles an hour through these bumps. Rob McCachran is running his consistent pace as planned, and in fact, he has passed Roger Mears, who started 5 positions ahead of him. On corrected time, that means McCachran actually has a better than 5-minute lead on Mears. At the end of lap 1, McCachran was in 7th place. Thanks to Robbie's downtime, this guy is now in 1st place on corrected time. Ivan Stewart. Dave, I mentioned a few moments ago about the deceptive speeds out here. Why is there such a variation in those speeds?
Off-road racing is all about suspension, and every one of these trucks is different. They're not built off of one straight jig. They're all different, and that's why you'll see variations of speed by different vehicles.
What's the difference between Ivan's truck and now this one, Kurt LeDuc's?
Ivan's is a fully independent suspended mid-engine truck, and this is Kurt's, a front-engine, straight-axle rear truck. They each have their own advantages. Ivan's made just corner just a little bit better.
This is a surprise of the race for me. Jack Johnson, no time in this truck, in third place after the first lap.
No surprise to me. I've known Jack Johnson a long time. He's a true veteran in the sport. We race motorcycles together, and like so many good racers, he can jump into anything and get it done.
John Swift in his Rough Rider Ranger was 6th on corrected time after the first lap. We'll have some changes in that leaderboard as everyone comes through the start-finish line for the second time, and Walker Evans is the first truck to get there, although he'll have to wait and see how his time stacks up against the field, including this guy, Jim Smith. He'll definitely clock a time that should move him up in the standings. Jimmy started 7th and now has passed everyone in front of him except Walker Evans. Once again, remember, all these drivers are running against the clock. Look at the smoke. Robbie Gordon has managed to nurse his truck around the lap, but he's lost all of the time and then some that he had in that first lap. Here's the Iron Man, Ivan Stewart. He's on pace to take over the lead as we follow him through the start-finish line with his in-car camera. Ivan was 2nd after the first lap and will now inherit the lead from the ailing Robbie Gordon. Gordon, in fact, is now officially running almost 6 minutes behind Ivan on corrected time. And look at Ivan's breath there. Boy, it is still a cool ride out here. Bob Ritchie is the next truck through. He's running a solid race, although he's losing a body panel there as he comes through the start-finish line. He'll move into the 7th spot after lap number 2.
Kurt Leduc is running strong, Steve. In fact, he'll move into the top 5 with the lap he just turned.
Kurt told me before the race he loves these wet conditions. It reminds him of his racing experience back east. Things will remain very tight here at the Nature's Recipe Parker 400 as we watch Marty Coyne run up to the start-finish line trying to hold off another one of our leaders, John Swift. Less than a minute and a half separate the first 5 trophy trucks. Ivan Stewart leads the pack when we return for more off-road racing on Prime. Welcome back to Off-Road Racing on Prime. Steve Weiss and Dave Ashley here to watch the leader, Ivan Stewart, continue to move well against the rest of the field in the Nature's Recipe Parker 400. This is the big V10 Dodge of our second place truck, Walker Evans. At last year's Parker 400, Walker had problem the first lap and then had to play catch-up. It's a different story today, no problems yet, and he is sailing. He's being pressured, though, by Jim Smith, who is running 3rd.
I'm really proud of Jim. He's out here running his own race through this rough terrain, and he's being very patient with what he's doing.
Rob McCachran is playing it safe as well, back in 6th place, and even though we've completed 2 laps, remember, we've got a long lap, number 4, still to go, so he's in real good shape. In not so good of shape is Robbie Gordon. And the question remains, Dave, how long will this truck run, losing oil like it is, before the motor just goes?
This is off-road racing. This is the big test out here on Man and Machine. Take a look at those sponsors, Ford and Valvoline. Robbie's adding oil to that truck every time he gets a chance, but it's running short a lot of the time. We're going to see if he's going to make it to the finish line.
We know Robbie will keep pushing it. Oh, and he takes part of a bush with him as he goes by. You're right, Dave. This is the real test of the products we were talking about. Here comes number 21, Jack Johnson. He has now dropped from 3rd to 9th, but I'm sure his boss, Walker Evans, is still real happy, and you know that Jack is thrilled to be part of this team.
This is actually a Class 8 truck that's kind of got limited travel and stuff that will go into this first race, but someone has to be fairly conservative with the truck to make sure I don't hurt it and not get it to the finish line. And after this race, we're going to cut it apart and update it to trophy truck specs, you know, with all the wheel travel and everything. So by San Felipe, we'll be up to speed and be able to go out and run with the big boys.
Let's check on the rest of the big boys in this field. Danny Lettner, the former stock car driver who was really hoping for a big race here at Parker and was first off the line, has dropped back to 8th place now on corrected time. Another guy who usually is a factor but hasn't been today is Larry Ragland. Problems with the drive shaft and transmission have bothered him. His team, by the way, is building him a new truck. And just seconds behind, this is Ragland's old truck, now driven by Javier Espinoza of Ensenada, Mexico. Javier is looking for a piece of history as he attempts to become the first Mexican citizen to finish a Ducati trophy truck race.
Here's Roger Mears, and he's just driven just about everything. Indy cars, sprint cars, midgets, stock cars. Mickey Thompson trucks, and I think Budweiser's followed him all the way through his career. There must be something about off-road racing that keeps bringing him back.
I'm not sure if moral victories are good for anything, but Jason Baldwin should feel pretty good the fact that he still has this untested truck still running down the road at this point. Ron Stobaugh has not cracked the top 10 in his Ford today, but he too is, if nothing else, getting some valuable time in this trophy truck event. Uh-oh, here's a problem for last year's Baja 1000 Class 1 winner. Let's check on Carl.
We're taking it easy, and we want to get a finish and get some time on these new trucks. It's the first time I've even sat in these trucks on the start line.
Meanwhile, Robbie Gordon is making a move on Javier Espinoza, and Dave, let's talk about this pass.
Well, the NFL has the bump and run, and so does off-road racing, except for there's a little courtesy there. Javier let him right on by, and that's probably a smart move. When Robbie's aggressive like he is right now, you don't want to be in his way.
Ivan Stewart is coming through the start-finish line as he completes lap number 3, and he will hold on to the top spot. It's the Ironman by less than a minute over Walker Evans, followed by Smith, LeDuc, and Swift. It's still anybody's race. Stay with us for more off-road action on Prime. Welcome back to the Nature's Recipe Score Parker 400 on Prime, and we are following race leader Ivan Stewart into his pits. We'll put a clock on it. In a race this short, 200 miles, this should be his only stop, shouldn't it, Dave?
Yeah, you just saw Ivan wave off his pit crew. That means everything's okay. He didn't even want any water. He didn't want his goggles clean. He's running in the clear. But they're going to put about 41, 42 gallons into this truck. And wow, they just did it in 14 seconds. That's unbelievable. I think that's fast even on a pavement course, but they're in the middle of the desert making this kind of a pit stop.
Ivan is now getting back up to speed. What's he thinking about right now, Dave?
As a driver, you're thinking, last lap, I'm leading. I've got a 1-minute lead on the rest of the field. I don't want to make any mistakes. I want to make sure that everything I do is precise. I don't want to clip any rocks. I don't want to jam any ditches too hard. I want to make all the right moves.
This is Walker Evans' first truck on the road, second place on corrected time as he negotiates his way past lap traffic. That's Jason Baldwin in the number 66 truck, and Walker is really running well, Dave.
He sure is, and here's another great in-car camera view, and look at the speed going across this desert. And those are cross-grained ditches that you're seeing that have just freshly been washed out by this new rain we had.
Here's another look at our course map.
When we last saw Ivan, he had 130 miles to go, and he's out toward Midway now and heading toward the fastest part of the course through the pole lines. He's going to weave his way back around a bounce through the rough section to Midway, another fast section, right back into the finish line.
Jim Smith is poised to make his move. He's had the Ultra Wheels Ford in third place most of the day. He's still riding high from his first at last year's Baja 1000. If Smith has an edge out here, it might have something to do with the technology in the back end of that big Ford. Dave Ashley has a closer look at this very special truck.
Off-road racing is not a lot different than NASCAR when it comes to pit stops. Getting a driver in and out of the pits in a hurry has become incredibly important. With me today is Mike Schofstall, and I'd like to ask Mike, what have you guys done in the off-season?
Well, we went to the NASCAR-style stud. We glue our lug nuts to our wheels, and we got the really super-duper Impex. We can get our guy in and out about 28 seconds, but then you got to remember, too, that these tires are 125 pounds.
Tell us a little bit about this Steve Chrisman rear end underneath this truck.
Well, it's developed for drag racers, and they have over 5,000 horsepower, and I figure if it can take that, it'll take 650 all day long. It's a bulletproof piece. Not many people have them. I think there's 3 available, and we have 2 of them.
Dave, the technology you are talking about is a good example of how the racers are allowed, even encouraged, to find new developments to go faster and further. Smith will need every edge he can find to stay ahead of the Ironman, who, although he is physically behind Walker Evans and Smith on this last lap, he is ahead of both of them on time. Rob McCachran is also still in the hunt.
You know, Steve, this is an older truck. Rob's won a lot of races with this and a lot of championships, but this F-150 is going to be retired pretty soon for Rob's new truck.
Here comes Robbie Gordon in his new version, although he might be happy at the moment to be in an older truck that wasn't leaking quarts of oil at a time. Robbie is about to get around McCachran, who decides to simply stop and let him go by. Is McCachran making a mistake by not trying to hold him off here, Dave?
Absolutely not. That's part of the strategy. Rob's playing the chess game right now. He's let Robbie go by in a section where he could get over real well. And the next couple of sections coming up, as you can see, there's a lot of boulders alongside the road. He doesn't want to get off there and take a chance on knocking a drive shaft out of the truck.
Kurt Leduc in the number 3 spot after lap number 3. He's really had the field out in front of him all day long because he started clear back in the 16th position at the start line this morning. John Swift is holding on to the number 5 position on the leaderboard. He's had a tough time making up time on the guys in front of him. John, by the way, is a second-generation desert racer. His dad, Ray, started racing in Baja in the 60s. And Dave, look here, the Simons have worked themselves back into this race.
They're never out of it if they're running, and I'm telling you, when these guys run, they run extremely hard. I don't think there's anybody out here who would deny that.
Here's Tom Baker now behind the wheel in the RCR Ford truck, taking over for Bob Ritchie, who has been running in the top 10 all day. Let's take a look at who is out of the Nature's Recipe Parker 400 at this point. It's a list that includes Steve Kelly, Roger Mears, and all 3 of the Baldwin racing trucks. We're back inside now with race leader Ivan Stewart here on lap number 4.
Steve, I've been on this part of the course many times. This is a part of the course that runs along a huge aqueduct. It's got mine shafts that he's going to run in between, and he's going to run next to, and he's going to have a lot of rock that's been blasted. He's got to be very careful not to slip off of one of these ridgebacks and slide into a ditch. He also doesn't know how much water's on the course after the big rains that we've had previous to this.
Oh, he does now as he gets a bath as he hits one of those puddles. Ivan came into this race ready for anything.
The objective is going to be to run this whole race without any downtime at all, because somebody's going to do it. There's so many good trucks out there, that cream of the crop, as we know, so somebody will get through. So the objective is going to be to do this whole race without any kind of mistakes.
Stay with us. We'll see if there are any mistakes in the Ironman's future when we continue here on Prime. Welcome back to more off-road racing here on Prime with Steve Weiss and Dave Ashley, and Ivan Stewart looks to be pulling over.
This is the point in the race where every driver starts hearing and feeling things. I think what Ivan's doing here is he's pulling over to have something checked out. And I think what he's thinking is pull in the pit, find out about it now. Don't find out about it out on the course. Everything's fine, good to go. He's back out on the course, just that quick.
That quick stop won't disappoint Walker Evans, who trailed Ivan by 49 seconds at the start of this lap. Walker is being hampered, though, by a spark plug that is costing him some power. He's also had a flat tire, so he's really got to pick it up from here on in. And you'd never know it to look at him, but Jim Smith is apparently holding back just a little because his truck is overheating slightly. Luckily for Jim, it's a cool day for desert racing in the mid-60s. This will be a challenging year for Jimmy because he is sharing garage space and time with Robbie Gordon. He says he and young Robbie will take different approaches to this desert series.
My race strategy this year is to win the championship. Robbie's strategy is to win every race. So you'll see Robbie go for it, and I think you'll see me play possum a little bit. And not that I don't intend on going out to win this race, but I'm not going to. The overall championship is what this Ultra Wheel Ford's all about.
Boy, that suspension is really soft and smooth. It allows you to take this truck down a road like this at about 120, 125 miles an hour.
Rob McCachran is starting to let it all hang out as he's moved up to the 3rd car on the road. Let's pause a moment and take a closer look at this beautiful area playing host to the first stop on the SCORE International Series. It's the biggest event of the year in this small southwestern community, attracting fans and thousands of dollars to Parker. For more than 2 decades, desert racing and Parker, Arizona have gone hand in hand.
And what this does for us is just incredible. It's one of the reasons that the county and the town of Parker were so willing to lend monetary support to the event this year. We really need it here.
Nearby Parker Dam is the deepest dam in the world, with 73% of its structure below the Colorado riverbed. In addition to the power generated, this river has also fueled the development of a major recreation area. In nearby Lake Havasu City, the world-famous transplanted London Bridge attracts visitors from throughout the country. And just across the river from Parker is the town named for one of the Old West's most colorful figures, Wyatt Earp, whose reputation was probably even bigger than the man himself. But first and foremost, this is Indian country. 4 separate Indian tribes coexist on a reservation established in the mid-1940s. The Mojave Indians have lived in this region for thousands of years, raising a variety of crops in the rich, flooded soil. After World War II, the Navajo and Hopi were relocated to this area, and this blending of cultures has resulted in a potpourri of artisans and craftsmen. Today, the Colorado River Indian Reservation is governed by a 9-member tribal council, with 25 governmental departments and more than 300 employees. This place is unique among American Indian reservations, with 4 diverse cultures living harmoniously. Unique also is the term used to describe the desert here, remote to some, but a beautiful and exciting playground to others. It's a resource shared by all.
There's a lot of people that come here just because of the Parker 400. It's our role to provide recreation opportunities to the people, and frankly, there's a lot of spectators that are very interested in this. You know, our interest is in their safety and actually keeping the race within environmental limits.
Safe, beautiful, and exciting. This is the home of the Parker 400. Back to the race now, and Ivan Stewart will have to wait to check out those sights. What's that on his dash?
Well, Steve, he's one of the rare off-road racers that's never switched to a full-face helmet. Ivan wears an open-face helmet, and that little shield right there is cockpit adjustable. It keeps the rocks and the wind out of his face. Probably more important for him right now at the speed that he's running with no rocks is to keep that wind deflected over the top of his helmet and keep from straining his neck.
For all his downtime, Robbie Gordon is really moving again. He was in 10th place at the end of the 3rd lap, and he has definitely improved on that. It may be too late for a run at Ivan, but he can still pick up some points. Dave, you've seen Robbie drive for quite a while. What do you think makes him so successful in the desert?
Well, I've ridden with him, and I'll tell you what, I think he thinks a lot differently than a lot of drivers. I know myself personally, when I'm driving a vehicle, I think about keeping it under control because I think about what could happen if it gets out of control. I think Robbie Gordon knows that the vehicle's going to get out of control and has all the confidence in his driving ability that he can save it in any condition, and that's what he does, saves it all the time.
Kurt Leduc also continues to run well right up to the finish line. This is going to be a close race with Smith, McCachran, Evans, and Leduc all within a minute or two of each other, just a couple of minutes behind Ivan Stewart. Should be a great finish. Stay with us here on Prime. Welcome back to the finish line, the Parker 400, where Robbie Gordon's team is waiting to reattach a piece of equipment he lost very early in this race. Get your stopwatches out. This will be a close one. Walker Evans is the first truck across the line. He'll have to wait and see how this time holds up since he was one of the earliest starters. Remember, everyone is running against the clock. Jim Smith should be the next guy. Here he is. His time good enough to beat Walker. So for the moment, he's in first place, dropping Walker to second. But our leader for most of the day, Ivan Stewart, is still on the race course and is still the man Smith will need to beat. What a great last lap for Rob McCachran as he posts the fastest lap of the day, averaging better than 63 miles an hour. That time is good enough to put him ahead of Walker Evans and just 7 seconds behind Jim Smith. So quite a comeback for the defending champ. Here, though, is our winner. Ivan Stewart, the fastest overall time of the day, beating the field by 2.5 minutes, Dave.
Well, you know he's got to be really happy to start the season off with a win, have those points in the bag, and go to the next race knowing that he's the points leader for this championship.
A happy Ivan Stewart and a disappointed Robbie Gordon. They reattach his hood. He is covered with oil.
The test is over. Robbie Gordon came here to win this race for Ford and Valvoline, but he didn't quite get it done. But I'll tell you what, he did prove out the product for the sponsors, and that's really important in this form of racing. He did get to the finish line.
Robbie finishes 6th. This is career victory number 79 for the Iron Man, his 5th win at Parker, and a sweet victory for Ivan, who had dedicated this race to a member of the Toyota PPI crew, Ron Bates, who suffered a heart attack during last year's Baja 1000. Here's a look at how it all sorted out. Ivan Stewart in the top spot, followed by Jim Smith in a Ford, Rob McCachran also in a Ford, Kurt Leduc in a Jeep, and Walker Evans in his Dodge. Robbie Gordon was 6th, Paul Simon 7th, John Swift was 8th, Bob Ritchie finished 9th, and Jack Johnson was 10th. No real problems for Ivan Stewart.
Never missed a beat all day, and to run with these kind of guys, the caliber of people we're racing with, it's fantastic to be here.
You couldn't afford any mistakes. Did you have any problems at all?
The only problem we started to have was the shifter was starting to give me some problems toward the end. I couldn't shift it from 4th to 5th. But again, Steve, I really want to say that I'm just thrilled to be able to be racing, I think probably the finest off-road race truck out there. And thanks, Cal, and in a race with these guys, the best in the business, and then to beat them is fantastic. I love it.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, the pace was wide open for 200 miles, and you know, I haven't won it, but I'll tell you, we had that Ultra Custom Wheels Ford F-150 running flat out almost all day.
I started off conservative. You know, I wanted to make sure I get through those first 3 loops, and at the end we were going to wake it up and try to win this race. And it was really tight with like 4 or 5 guys there all the way from the midway point in.
I knew I was running out in front, but I also had some good split times, and I knew a couple of them were catching me, especially when I had a flat, a couple other little bitty problems, but it was still nice to run up front all day.
Coming around the first lap, looks like we lost a cylinder or something. I think we started puking oil and running on 6 cylinders. You know, we're kind of bummed because we had a good car. It's disappointing, motors 2 races in a row, but you know, we'll get a handle on it and be back for the next one.
There are your top 3. Stay with us for highlights of the Pro Series race, which includes our co-host Dave Ashley. We'll be back with more off-road racing here on Prime. The 1995 Nature's Recipe Parker 400 featured 182 starters in 14 different classes in the Pro and Sportsman Series. This is the 22nd year various buggies and trucks have come to Parker, and it's always one of the best and biggest races of the year, with preseason expectations high and plenty of new pieces of technology ready to be tested. The Parker 400 is also known for dishing out the best and worst Mother Nature has to offer. This year, days of rain kept the dust down but left plenty of mud and standing water. The first car off the line was Stuart Chase, and he bounced through the desert as one of the early Class 1 leaders, but the pack was in hot pursuit. Bob Gordon, Robbie's father, and Ed Herbst, who had the fastest first lap in Class 1, provided some of the early excitement. Pat Dean spent the night before the race installing a new motor, enabling him to also run with the leaders. And Mike Juleson came over from Class 10 to, as he put it, take on the big boys. The fastest truck or car on the road was the Chevy of Rick Johnson, who led everyone for the first 2 laps. The Ford of our co-host Dave Ashley was close behind, sharing driving time with Dan Smith. The big Class 8 truck rumbled along and was 3rd overall after the first 2 laps. Another Chevy, that of young Jimmy Johnson, sat waiting in the wings, here passing Darren Skilton's Jeep in the process. Johnson held on to 4th overall after the first 2/3 of the race. In Class 10, Larry Jobe raced to the lead in the first lap before an altercation with the pole slowed him down. Kevin Davis in his 93 Jimco inherited the lead for the rest of the way, driving Ray Kroll's old rig around the course. His biggest competition came from young Tim Scalzo, driving solo in a 94 Raceco. In the 1600 class, Danny Porter proved that the 3rd time's a charm, refusing to let breakdowns at the last couple of Parker 400s phase him. He did have to fend off last year's season series points champion Robert Nolan. Nolan and partner Todd Tusher put it all together in 1994.
We took the time, took care of the car, made sure everything was in A1 condition before we went out there, and we drove real smart. We probably weren't necessarily the fastest, but we drove smart and hard.
Brent Grizzle moved up as the field thinned down to claim the 3rd spot in this always competitive class. In Class 5, Mike Jacobson had nearly a perfect run with no flats and no downtime. That made it tough for Neil Grabowski and the rest of the Class 5 buggies, who found themselves down with little hope of catching up to the speedy Jacobson. The Class 5 1600 race was a little closer, with Gustavo Villasolo of Baja finding a way to fight through the pack. Daniel Ledesma in his 68 VW applied the pressure, as did Mark Fody, who coaxed his 69 VW to twist and turn its way through the tough course. The mini pickup battle was the best one of the day. with Jeff Lewis in a Chevrolet trying to put some distance between himself and George Ybarra in a Ford. It wasn't easy as the two swapped the lead back and forth, with Lewis finally pulling off a 7-second margin of victory. The stock mini pickup class left Brady Helm and the rest of the field wondering if they could ever catch Scott Steinberger. The answer was no. Off-road veteran Malcolm Vinci had alternator problems but hustled in for third. It was another good battle in the full-size stock truck class. Rough Rider Steve Oligas teamed with Tim Casey in their Spirit-built Ford Lightning to try and defend their 1994 class championship. As usual, the competition was provided by the Hummer of Chad Hall, son of off-road legend Rod Hall, who would try and make up time in the rough stuff. The stock mini pickup battle featured Carl Jackson of nearby Lake Havasu City in a '94 Nissan. In Class 3, Robert Haley went most of the first lap without brakes and held on for the win. In Class 9, Rick Poole and Mike Faulkner were back to defend their Parker 400 crown and held off a competitive class for a 6-minute win. And Terry Kiley and Chris Woodard led all the way in the Class 11 competition. There was not a class for mountain bikes, but it was a great way for spectators to get around, including trophy truck driver John Swift, still trying to burn off some nervous energy.
Yeah, I had just to get out here and enjoy the desert and kind of unwind a little bit and watch the other competitors race their race. So just out here unwinding, enjoying the desert.
As usual, there was an assortment of thrills and spills at the Parker 400. And the desert was tough on the field, with less than half the participants finishing the race. Mike Juleson's Class 1 buggy was one of the survivors as he took the lead for good late in the race. And when Rick Johnson and Dave Ashley both broke down, Jimmy Johnson in his Nelson & Nelson Chevrolet stepped in to pick up the pieces. Stay with us, we'll go to the finish line of the Pro Series race when we come back here on Prime. Welcome back to the Nature's Recipe Parker 400 on Prime, where Mike Juleson in his 20th Parker 400 claims the Class 1 and overall title, sharing the driving duties with Bob Lofton. Their winning time more than 5 minutes faster than second place Pat Dean. Juleson is a happy racer.
I've been out here working for a long time for this, and I just don't know what to say. I'm just so grateful to everybody that's helped me over the years, and my partner Bobby, and I'm just very, very grateful.
19-year-old Jimmy Johnson of Hemet, California wins his first Class 8 race, and he will be a force to be reckoned with in the future. He averaged 55 miles an hour and finished with a 30-minute margin over second place Dave Westham. Johnson said patience was the key to the race.
I kept my own pace and ran it, and Dave Ashley and Rick Johnson were kind of getting away from me here and there, and we'd play a little game of cat and mouse, and I just let them run away with it, and they both ended up breaking, and the race came back to us.
And Tim Casey brought the Rough Rider Ford Lightning home first for he and Steve Oligas in the stock truck class. Good for the only Rough Rider win of the day. Here's a look at the winners in the Pro Series race. Mike Juleson and Bob Lofton in Class 1, Danny Porter in Class 1-2 1600, in Class 3 Robert Haley, Class 5 Mike Jacobson, and in Class 5 1600 Gustavo Vildesolo of Baja, Mexico. In Class 7, Jeff Lewis, Class 7S, Scott Steinberger, Class 8, Jimmy Johnson, Class 9, Rick Poole, and in Class 10, Kevin Davis. As we take a look at the rest of the winners and a final look at the Ducati Trophy Truck finishers, let's bring our co-host Dave Ashley back in for a final thought.
Well, Dan Smith and I didn't have all that great a day, but we'd certainly like to congratulate Jimmy Johnson for his victory, as well as Ivan Stewart, Jim Smith, and Rob McCackern for their great run in the Trophy Truck Series. And as usual, I'd like to thank Ford and BF Goodrich for their continued support of the Ford Rough Riders.
Thanks, Dave. The Parker 400 has been brought to you by Toyota Motorsports, technology on a fast track, and by the new Dodge, a division of the Chrysler Corporation, and Nature's Recipe, innovative pet food, the natural for today's pet. A special thanks to Sal Fish and Score International and the Baldwin Race Team for aerial support. For Dave Ashley, I'm Steve Weiss. Thanks for joining us, and so long from Parker, Arizona.